Today's guest on the Winning Teams podcast is Ray Arata. Ray is really fascinating, great advocate for women, great ally for women. He's the author of two books, the most recent of which is Showing Up, How Men Can Become Effective Allies in the Workplace. He's also the founder of the Better Man Conference, and he talks somewhat about that, which is really interesting, and his stories to how he came to this position of being such a very strong ally for women in the workplace. But we really do talk about the damaging impacts that, not honoring women, not being an ally for women, being fearful of being an ally for women, being fearful of speaking up, and recognizing that silence is every bit as bad as being a harsh critic, and really silence is the enemy in this environment. But really helpful in terms of how men, and particularly in terms of the white men privilege, how men can really become strong allies, how they can do it, how they can approach it, and how they can do it very much with kind of self-examination, and also taking the stages of where they become strong allies and things they can do. His book, Showing Up, I would highly recommend. It's a really fascinating book, and I think it's a book that all white men should be reading in business, because it's still, as I said in the interview with Ray, it is still very much a boys' club at a senior level in organizations, and as not as much has changed as we would like to think or would like to have hoped would have changed. So I really commend to listen to this, and also to take some of the actions that Ray is talking about, because this is something where we need to be strong, we need to take action, and we need to do it both individually and collectively. So great to have Ray on the podcast. If you are liking these podcasts, please go and give us a review, because that helps us to get more people listening to us, which is the whole object of the exercise. But in the meantime, sit back and enjoy Ray Arata. Ray, thank you so much indeed for being a guest here on the Winning Teams podcast. It's a great honor to have you.
It's an honor to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
That's been fun. You're the author of two books, the most recent of which is Showing Up, How Men Can Become Effective Allies in the Workplace, which I have, and you can see that I've marked in various places. You're also a founder of the Better Man Conference, and if I can quote from that, is the intention of which is to educate, activate, and mobilize men as inclusionary leaders by leveraging their position and privilege to support and empower women and minorities. How did you come to do this work?
So there's two parts to the story. The first part is what I call the 1-2 punch wake-up call. In 1999, in the span of I think 2 months, the then mother and of my 3 children and wife, we had moved into our brand new home that we had renovated, and I got the "I don't love you anymore" speech. And 6 weeks later, one of my partners of a financial retirement planning consulting business to high-tech companies in Silicon Valley, in the middle of the night, went from our firm to another. So it was a betrayal of sorts, and I did not possess the ability to deal with these two very emotional events. So I did what most men do, and I stuffed my emotions and went sideways for a while. And one day, when I picked up the phone and yelled at our syndicate desk, my manager came in the office and said, "Ray, what the hell are you doing? You can't do that." And I walked into his office, and somehow the way he and there were some other things that he said, I said, "Thank you for calling me out. Some of the things you said were very similar to what my wife has been telling me. I need to do something." And he said, "Close the door," and he hands me this brochure, and I look at it, and it says, "New Warrior Adventure Training, Men's Weekend." And I look at him like, what the bleep is this? And I'm like, and then I said that, sparing your audience the expletive. Yeah. And he smiled and said, "I can't tell you what they do there," nod, nod, wink, wink, "but it changed my life. Here, call my wife. She'll tell you." And I was like, wow, I was desperate. So on trust, I I called it up. I went to Texas of all places. And I did this weekend. And in a nutshell, what the weekend was an introspective look at how the pained little boy in me was driving the adult bus and how I was impacting those around me, particularly those I loved. And so this sent me on a journey. I joined a men's group, which I now refer to as the emotional gymnasium, because what the weekend did was it helped me connect to my emotions consciously as opposed to reacting unconsciously from them. And as I started doing this and participating in the weekends, ultimately becoming a leader of the weekends, which now has me at 55 weekends, maximum security, 15,000 hours of working with men on how to live and lead the heart. It was this trajectory I had no idea that I was gonna be on. And so somewhere in around 2011, 2012, when I was writing my first book, Wake Up, Man Up, Step Up, I met a diversity and inclusion consultant who said, Ray, you really have something here. Corporate America needs to hear from you, specifically the men. But before you do that, I want you to go to a women's leadership event. You're probably going to be the only guy. And I said, okay, I was the only guy. So I went to this event, and then I had this pouring of realizations. Oh, now I know what my mom has been trying to tell me. Youngest of two in an Italian-American family, where all the rights, privileges, and opportunities went to her older brother, my godfather and uncle, because he was a boy. Yeah. And she didn't get that because she was a girl. And then my current and then wife, Anna, she was one of seven, the oldest in an Italian-American family in San Francisco. Her father was a supervisor, but her youngest brother was running the real estate business. I drew some conclusions. I'm like, And then finally, my daughter was going to be graduating from Duke with a degree in computer science. And I'm like, okay, man in the mirror moment. That's part two of the story. And so I started speaking to audiences at conferences full of women. And I remember saying, this is going to take friggin' forever. Somebody needs to do something. Somebody needs to do something. Maybe that someone's me. And I had this idea. I called up a bunch of corporate folk, Genentech, Kaiser Permanente, Price Waterhouse. And I said, I've got this idea. I want to advance healthy masculinity into the leadership conversation. Would you back me? And with that, I started the conference. Michael Kimmel, I had met at his conference. I walked backstage using all my white male privilege, and I met Sheryl Sandberg and Jennifer Siebel Newsom, the filmmaker, told them what I was up to, started some partnerships. And with that, 150 people showed up to this first conference. Here we are 13 conferences later. So I fed the activist in me, and that whole journey of doing that conference ended up informing me on what I needed to write the book about, specifically because, and I'm almost done, men were asking me, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Companies were reaching out to me. How do I engage my men? And then anybody else who came from a historically marginalized group wanted to support and be supported. So all of that, all roads pointed to the Better Man Conference. And so I'll stop there, but hopefully I'll give you and your listeners some context.
It does give phenomenal context. And it also, I mean, as you were talking beforehand, I mean, I do a lot of work internationally with some large corporates. And, the truth of the matter is that it is still, despite some advancement, it is still predominantly a boys' club.
Yep.
And it is still very challenging. And I coach quite a number of very senior women in very senior leadership roles. And,
yes.
And it is difficult for them. There is no doubt it is difficult for them. And we have not made the sort of progress that we could have, should have. And I want to come back to that, but I want to quote something from your book, which is a great read, by the way. I found it absolutely a fascinating read and a very helpful read, in fact. And you were talking about you said in December of 2020, largely due to the pandemic, 100% of jobs lost were held by women. And December 2020, women lost a total of 156,000 jobs, while men gained 16,000 jobs, according to the National Women's Law Centre. Of the net 9.8 million jobs lost since February 2020, women's jobs have accounted for 55%. As a result of these dynamics, more than 1 in 4 women are contemplating what many would have considered unthinkable just 6 months ago, downshifting their careers or leaving the workforce completely. That is devastating.
The she session is what they've referred to it, because the burden and the weight of the double bind that men are only starting to begin to feel and acknowledge, which is, I want to perform at work, or I need to perform at work, but I also have stuff to do at home. And so COVID just shone the light on that for both genders, actually. But the ones that took the hits more than anyone else were the women.
Yeah, I mean, it is extraordinary. The other thing I want to talk about is talk about the damaging damaging impact of the man box from Tony Porter, who you quote in your book, whose TED Talk, A Call to Men, has been viewed by almost 3 million people, which is extraordinary. But, you talk about some of the things you're talking about, that real men don't show their emotions, real men don't ask for help. I mean, when you read that, you kind of go, oh, yeah, okay. But actually, it's so damn true.
That's right. What's even worse is if you go to schoolyards and you ask the little boys, what does it mean to be a man? You'll hear vestiges of these same rules. And so all I'm really trying to do, all Tony is really trying to do, all Paul Kivel, who came up with the notion of the man box, are trying to do is point out that these unwritten rules of what it means to be a man aren't working for anybody, men included. So in order to be an ally and an inclusionary leader, it's a behavior change endeavor. So by shining the light, not just on your bias, not just on your privilege, but your emotions, because they play into all this, as well as the man box, now men can see why they're doing what they're doing, and they can move to make a conscious choice to be better. That's why they call it men's work. It takes an effort.
Yeah. And I mean, the real elephant in the corner, and you can refer to that in terms of the reluctance, is why men can be reluctant to become allies, is power, because power kind of comes with the role of leadership, and us men, we just don't want to give it up, do we?
That's true for some. I have a story to share about the benefit I got in giving up power. And for white men, there's a piece I teach around decentering oneself and centering others. The patriarchal model of I'm the man, I got to do it all, it's friggin' exhausting. And so when I was writing this book and I reached out to a lot of women friends and I got support, I didn't have to do it all. I realized, oh my God, this feels good. I don't have to do it all. And I feel supported. Why did I wait so long to understand and grok this? And so I just wanted to say that. And the whole thing about power, is we as men use power to control. And if you look underneath control, the reason why we control is we're afraid.
Yes.
So my invitation is to confront what we're afraid of. It's usually myth, and to actually contemplate the benefits of relinquishing control or sharing power. There's nothing wrong with sharing power, especially when a smart woman or anybody that doesn't identify like me has a great idea. Now you can be a good leader because you stepped back and you let somebody else step into the role and feel, as you would imagine, the burden of leadership. I've assumed the burden and I take it on, but I don't need to have it all the time.
It's interesting when we talk about, because we talk about white man privilege, and
Yes.
and the fact is it is a privilege. I mean, that's yes. The truth of it. There's no doubt about it. But in a sense, you can kind of say, okay, white man privilege, and you can say that in a slightly derogatory or kind of slightly insulting way. But the truth is, I mean, how can you channel that privilege to be an asset and to be an ally?
Well, first thing you have to do, and this is what I do in the book to a degree and in my trainings with companies, is I humanize privilege as opposed to demonize it. Yeah. And I help people understand what it is and what it isn't. So when I talk to people about privilege, it's akin to advantage. And so even when I've, did a training for UK Verizon men, there was a bunch of guys in there that said, I didn't grow up with any privilege. I, grew up in a very poor neighborhood. And I worked really hard. And I'm like, great. So I want to acknowledge that that was difficult. And you don't know what it's like to walk into a room as a woman of color with a room of predominant white men and trying to figure out, is it safe? Who can I talk to?
Yeah.
Are they going to say something about my hair? Imagine that times 1,000. And it's fatiguing, especially when many men walk around acting and speaking from an unexamined privileged perspective. And the person who's experienced the microaggressions, now they even have to be even more quiet. So that's one thing about privilege. When I help men understand, and not just white men, but anybody who has privileges, that you can make a conscious choice on how to use them, then the question becomes, how do I want to be experienced by other people?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to be the jerk? Do I want to be a good human being? Right? And I've been advancing my white privilege conversations into this notion of white male ability versus white male fragility. So you might wonder what the hell that means. Well, white male ability is using my privilege and accountability as my dynamic duo of superpowers to affect change. My white male fragility is my fear of what other men, white men, will think of me if I speak up, speak out, and I don't go along with the boys club. And I challenge white men to say, listen, if that's the worst thing that's going to happen, or they're going to sidebar comment versus you being arrested by virtue of your skin color or being attacked because of your gender, then take a breath and, I may not say this, but I might say it, man up a little bit,
Yeah.
Consciously. And then they're like, okay, what kind of guy do I want to be?
But, it's interesting when you were talking about, because you quote Jimmy Carter, said that, silence is as deadly as violence, right? Because
Right.
someone said, well, I don't contribute to it. I don't kind of partake in it, but I don't challenge it when I see it.
That's
How
right.
do you coach and train men to be brave enough to actually challenge it when they see it and when it may not be popular for them to do so?
Two parts. I'm a big believer in connecting to our emotions and confronting them. Like when a man has fear, he'll either fight, flight, or freeze. I encourage him to take a breath into his fear and use it to put him on high alert so he can continue moving into action. And so then if a man is willing and he can kind of be in that fear, but not let his unexamined emotion run him, then I teach what I call ownership driven accountability. Like, if this is happening on your watch, do you have something to do with it? So any of those guys saying like, I didn't, did somebody having microaggressions happen on your watch? If you're the leader, yes. What did you have to do with it? The answer is, I either let it happen or I intervened. So the intervene question becomes, you either call that man in, which is sidebar conversation with this idea saying, hey, I have some feedback for you. Are you open to hearing it? Now, presumably, if you're a leader and you tell your team, this is the kind of environment we're going to have, and I want everyone's participation, you will have set that up, versus call out. Now, call out is rare. If someone's saying or doing something that's injurious to somebody else, you got to call a timeout and say, hey, John, park it for a second. We'll talk after the meeting, and then you move on. Not okay. You got to be willing to kind of bring that blade of accountability and stop it to protect somebody else. That doesn't happen as often, but the slights and all those kinds of things, when a guy says something or talks over or takes a woman's idea, that's when you call them aside and you're in a teaching mode and you're a coaching mode and you're helping them see Socratically, are you aware how that landed?
Yeah.
No, well, their body language said this and this affected them, and then they don't participate. Is that the guy you want to be? No. Are you open to having a cleanup conversation to restore connection with that person? So I'm doing a training for a couple of companies, and I've been working on how to deliver this. So it's a timely question, because I do it second nature, but to put it on a slide to give steps to guys, I have to hurry up and slow down and go to a granular place so that I can teach it.
So, Ray, people listening to this, and men in particular listening to this, what can you tell them what they can do today, this week, to start becoming an effective ally?
So I have a context that I refer to all the time: crawl, walk, run. Crawl is, get the book, or before that, get interested and make a decision that you want to be a better ally and leader without vilifying yourself. So that's a very high level context. Then get the book and get curious, right? And when you start reading the book, there's exercises in there. You'll come out the other side a better guy, more aware, better leader. Now, that's crawl. Walk is, consider going to one of the Better Man conferences that we have annually. Somewhere between walk and run is if what I'm saying is landing and you're really honest with yourself about what's going on in your org, or there's women or marginalized folk in your life, reach out and we can contemplate what partnering would look like, a keynote or a training. That's what's happening right now. A tremendous number of companies are reaching out to me because with Time's Up, Me Too, COVID, and Black Lives Matter, all these have conspired to form what I call a perfect storm, which has put the spotlight on the majority, men. So we're at this place in time where we can let the minority of men drive the narrative, the bad apples, or we as the men, as the majority, can make a decision. Let's rewrite the narrative. Let's look at this at our company. Let's be willing to lift the hood and find out what other people are experiencing us and make some decisions to do some things differently. We'll win the war on talent. I'll tell you that much.
It's just when you to talk about talent, because one of the things that I have come across, I mean, gosh, this isn't news because it's well publicized, but one of the challenges for many organizations is precisely that, which is the acquisition and the retention of talent, right?
Yes.
When you look at the work that you're doing, how big an impact does the work that you are doing and the work that can be done with this on what impact can that have on talent, on the retention of talent?
So instead of the women leaving, they stay. They let it out to other women that this is a safe place and a positive place to work. So you get very talented women. The younger generation, the people that my kids' age, word gets out that it's not a good old boys club, just like your parents, and they'll be seen, heard, valued, and recognized for who they are. And that's where the talent wars are right now. So I'm noticing that a lot of the younger folk they're interviewing the interviewers.
Yes. Yeah.
And so companies must pay attention to this. And it's like I talk about men, as long as you have one reason why you want to be a better ally and leader, that's good. It's personal case, moral case, business case. The only case that isn't going to work for you is the dinosaur case, which is you holding your arms folded and not changing. Then you're going to be extinct like the dinosaur.
Yeah. You've been doing this work for quite a number of years now, Ray, and I mean, and to a very large extent, I mean, I know that the issue and the challenge has been around for quite some time, but it certainly feels like what you're doing with this work and the Better Man Conference is kind of it's really a great time for it. Do you feel, having worked at this for a number of years, are you optimistic about the future? Are you cautiously optimistic? You're rapidly optimistic, or where are you on that spectrum?
So I'm an eternal optimist, and only this year do I feel more optimistic than I've ever felt before. So I've had my fetal moments, and even this year, at the beginning of this year, all through the fall, I was like, oh, my book's going to launch. My life's going to be taken away because everyone's going to be calling me, and I'm going to have no life, and I'm not going to be able to ride my bicycle. That didn't happen. I sent out all these emails to all my contacts and to help promote the book, thinking that all these events around the book, no one responded. And then I started to put stuff out about the conference in June. Crickets. And so I reached out to a couple of them. I'm like, what the hell's going on? And they're like, Omicron, we're burnt. It's not you. It's just we've got 1,100 things on the list. But at the same time, every 3.5 days, a company would call, hey, can you speak here? Hey, can we talk to you about a training? And we had like 100% close ratio on all of those. So we've been ramping up. So all these things are going on all at once, and that's never happened. Never happened.
Extraordinary. That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
So the time is right. The time is right.
The time feels like it's right.
Right. I mean, right. It's this. This is fantastic. I love the stuff. I said I really loved the book. I found it refreshing, and I found it very helpful as well. To be perfectly honest with you, I found it really helpful in terms of the work that I do. Before I kind of ask you where people can reach out and get in touch with you and talk maybe about the Better Man Conference.
Yes.
2 questions I ask everybody. One is a book other than their own that they've read and that's had an impact. What the book is and what was the impact?
So the first book is A Road Less Traveled. I was asked this question before, and I realized, what the impact of that book validated that I've been on the road less traveled. Little did I know when I read that, how protracted and elongated that my truth would be, and it's still true. So there's that book. And then a book I'm reading right now is a book called Letters to My White Male Friends by Dax Devlon Ross. He's a Black man who just brings it straight without shame, and it's helping me understand my responsibilities as a white man who is becoming more anti-racist every day. I mean, I have to own that there's racist tendencies in me just because of growing up and things that happen, but that book is extremely helpful, and he's going to be one of my speakers, facilitators at our Better Man Conference. Oh,
that's a book. The M. Scott Peck book has been one that I've loved for many years, but that second one is a new one, so that goes on the list. Yeah. Second question is daily rituals, if you have them, what they are and how they support you in your life.
So the daily ritual actually starts the night before with making sure I'm going to bed at the right time. I have an Aura ring, so I'm paying attention to good sleep. Sleep for a 59-year-old man is the new drug. And so I always wake up in time for me to have my ritual, which starts with me coming upstairs, getting the coffee going, and then getting on my yoga mat and stretching. And then after I do that, while I'm watching the local news, I grab my cup of coffee, I go out on the porch and I meditate. And after I meditate, I pray, and it's kind of a gratitude for all the good things in my life. And I pray for those in need, and I give it up. And then I get the coffee and I bring down to my queen, my wife, and I give her a cup of coffee. And then I finish things off with a hot tub for these achy bones.
That sounds like a great ritual. That sounds like a really powerful. Every day. Very powerful. Very powerful. Ray, this has been great. Maybe tell us a little bit more about, people get in touch with you, get the book and the Better Man Conference.
Sure. So 3 different URLs. RayArata.com is how you get a hold of me and learn more about me, background, etc. There's other buttons there for the book. But if you go to showingupbook.com, by purchasing the book, you can register for a free virtual Better Man ticket, which is valued at $99. So that's a nice little bonus. If your company is interested in exploring this engaging men as allies on a more deeper level, you can contact me through rayarata.com. I would also invite your listeners to go to bettermanconference.com and sign up for our newsletter. I write blogs occasionally, and so that will keep you informed as to what conferences are happening. We've done an EMEA conference in the past. We might be doing one live in London this year, and or virtual. So that's the best way to be informed, stay informed with us.
Great. Ray, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure and honor to have you. I've enjoyed it. It's a great topic, and I wish you a continued success.
Thank you so much.